Welcome to the Prophecy Club. I've got Bryan Melvin on with us today. He's going to be speaking at the Prophecy Club Sunday morning, April 30th, and that's at 2540 K Avenue in Plano on the corner of Park and K in Plano. We ask you to be seated by 8:30. He's going to speak from 9 to noon. He's going to be actually giving two talks, one about hell, one about heaven. Been to both places. The name of the DVD is going to be called Hell in a Box and From Hell to Heaven. He grew up in a Baptist home, but didn't believe in Jesus. Actually had not heard much about Jesus. We've heard that story before. But he drank some bad water, got cholera, died for 4 hours. 2 years later, he had PTSD, went to church, and he's going to tell you about how he not only went to hell, but he also went to heaven. Okay, so Bryan, tell us about how you were raised, where you were raised, and how you were raised in church but never found Jesus.
Yes, Dan, I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up in a Southern Baptist home back in Virginia. My parents were very godly parents, but despite that, I found out that just because you were raised in a Christian home doesn't make you a Christian. And I fell away. I grew up in during the 1960s and in 1970s during a time of great turmoil, as most people can remember if they are still old enough. And that through this turmoil where I grew up in the south of Washington, D.C. area, was very politically charged and motivated, and all the world's philosophies were out there. And I was thrust into public school systems where they taught you that there was no God, no hope, no future, no afterlife, all these things. I remember sitting in a classroom where they were talking about all this stuff, and then this guy was playing this music. This is the eve of destruction, showing how that society had to be changed, and we were supposed to change society, and there was no God. Everything was relative. And so with all these grand ideas, I just fell away from God totally. It became a very militant atheist where I used to argue with Christians. I even had a young gal from Campus Crusade of Christ would come up to where I was hanging out. I grew up in a very rough neighborhood. We learned to fight. I grew up in a time period where there was a lot of fighting, a lot of violence. And so these Campus Crusade people would come up, and this gal came up and was witnessing to us. And there were very, very few Christians that ever came up and witnessed that I couldn't stump. But she was one of them that I could not stump. In my book, A Land Unknown, Hell's Dominion, I gave her the name as Trish because I honestly do not remember her name. But she was one of those Christians you just simply could not stump.
Is that because she wouldn't stop, or did she actually have the answer?
She had the answers. And the way she answered, she threw the answers right back at me. She threw questions at me that I couldn't answer.
So she had the answers, but that still wasn't convincing you?
No, she didn't convince me at all. Not at all, because she'd always throw those questions right back at me.
Okay, so were you at the position in life where there was no convincing, that no one was going to be able to tell you or show you anything to convince you?
I was of the opinion that I knew it all, and nobody was going to convince me of anything, because the way the world was going at that time, how violent things were, and I had such questions like, if God was so great, why did he allow evil in the world, and all these other questions that perplex and plague atheists all the time. So I just thought I was wiser than anybody else.
Have you seen the movie The Case for Christ? It's out right now.
No, I have not seen that movie. Go see.
Matter of fact, all you folks out there listening, go see that movie. In my opinion, that is the best Christian movie I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it really tugged at me. I was wiping away tears. I absolutely loved that movie. Now, here's the point. This guy did all of this research, and finally one of his buddies turned to him and said, well, exactly what would it take to convince you? Because is there not any point in all of this research, gathering all this information to where you can finally reach the point to where you can make a decision? Look, you're a reporter, the guy said. All you have to do is gather the facts and let the facts make the decision. Make a decision. Make a decision. And I think that's where a lot of people are. They simply want to do and live their life the way they want to live. They want to do what they want to do. They don't want to make a decision for Christ because then they have to live for Christ.
Yeah, that's right. That's how I was. I just did not want anything to do with Jesus because I thought that Jesus was the problem. I mean, I thought that religion was the problem. I thought everything, if we just get into this, unfortunately, I once slipped into this liberal mindset where you were going to save the world and institute whatever John Lennon's song was. There is no heaven, there is no hell, everything is just bliss. And it was really weird philosophy I was under.
Yeah.
And back then, when you're in school, I mean, it's not like school now. Back in elementary school and in high school and junior high, you learned philosophy. You learned mathematics and the sciences. You learned actually how to read, and a lot of philosophy was there thrown at us, at least where I was going to school. And so you had all these ideas, and it just made me more justified to hate God and turn away. That's how I was. I was a very militant atheist. I even tried to go visit my relatives on my grandparents' farm down in Southwest Virginia, and they were strong, devout Christians, and they would witness to me, and I would bat around, and I would thwart every attempt. And one day, my uncle and my aunt confronted me and asked me where the first seed come from. So I just went. I said it came from a bunch of molecules that decided to get together and make a plant. And then they went and reduced it more and said, where did all the stuff come from to make the first seed? And I had no answer. I turned all shades of red, and I got mad, and they just left it hanging there. And they told me a little bit about Jesus. I said, no, thank you, and went on my way, went back home up to Northern Virginia. Later, as I grew up, I became more militant, and I confronted that woman that was up there witnessing to us, as well as other people. Even had a pastor my mom sent to me to witness to me. I remember talking to him, smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer, and blowing smoke into space. I mean, I was a character. You just gotta understand. I was simply a character. But during the life course, I was an electrician, became an electrician, decided to move to Tucson, Arizona for a better job opportunity. That's where all this after-death experience began.
So essentially what you're saying is that there was nothing anyone could say that was going to convince you that Jesus is real and that you've been lied to until this experience happened. So what happened that killed you? That sounds like a funny question. So how'd you die?
Well, you're right. It did kill me. So after I came back, I moved to Tucson, Arizona. There I was at work one day and really thirsty, so I went over to a cooler that was over there and drank heavily from it. I handed it to my coworker. He spat it out. We opened it up and we looked inside, and it was all slimy. I always tell people it's like drinking Darwin's soup. I just said, what in the world? Why would you ever drink this? It was an accident. And shortly after that, I became really, really sick. I started vomiting, and it was like coming out of both ends at the same time. I had excruciating pain that was like razor blades slicing my stomach. I got worse and worse. I began to have a high fever. I was shaking. I got super sick. I was just lying on my sick bed. I just remember taking my last breath. And being an atheist, taking your last breath is something that you always remember. So sick and so much pain, sweating profusely. And all of a sudden, I took my last breath, and it was amazing. I could see across the room without my glasses. I could hear pristine clear. And the strange thing is I began to float above my body. And there I was looking down at my body, looking down, seeing myself, how I looked. It was an experience in itself. And right at that moment, as I floated up and I was looking down, I lost all thoughts of atheism. I was absolutely and totally wrong that there was going to be nothingness after you die, or that you die and become some dead hunk of meat. I was absolutely wrong. And there I was floating above my body, and I faced the ceiling, and I went right through the ceiling and right into a beautiful, I call it a beautiful black dark void, and I started to float toward this light. At first, I just simply did not comprehend what was going on because I felt great. It was wonderful to float in this void where you felt no pain, and there's no sweating, no vomiting, no throwing up, nothing. It was wonderful. I felt great peace. I felt great love, and I felt these things coming at me. And I also heard someone speaking in a still, quiet voice into my soul coming from the light. And I heard the voice begin to explain to me how God is perfect in all his ways, and all his ways are justice, that God is a good God, that he's a God of truth without injustice. He's absolutely righteous and upright as he. It was like, as I was floating through this void, I could hear this music, and it was singing those things to me. It was beautiful. Here I was going toward this light, and the light was slowly getting bigger and bigger. And as I was floating through here, I learned that God will never deny himself. He'll never deny his gifts, never deny his promises, never deny his calling. I found these things out later true when I read the Bible. I discovered what it means that God is a God of the living and not the God of the dead. I learned really quick floating through this void that God gave us all a gift of life. He's not going to take it away. He designed us as eternal beings. He placed eternity in our hearts, and that God will never deny anything that he gives. I was drawing closer and closer to the light with his music is hitting me, feeling this great love and joy and peace, and I drawing closer and closer to the light, and it became really into my mind that God could zap everybody into oblivion. But he will not, because this would cause him to go against who he is, a life-giving God. He gave a gift of life to us and angels, and he will not deny that gift of life because he gave us a gift of eternity in our hearts. I discovered all these things as I was floating through the void. It was explaining why evil exists. It was explaining that how the devil simply took advantage and abuse God's character traits to get what he wants. And that's something God will not do. And I was floating through this void, learning through these things like that. There I was floating, and I was feeling this great peace and love, getting all this information downloaded. But I was totally oblivious, missing something, that I was headed toward a reckoning. If I would have returned right then and there, I would be sharing a different story with you all, and I'd probably be on all the popular talk shows talking about everybody should go to the light because it's such great peace and love. But I was allowed to continue on. As I neared the light, I saw a great rock suspended in space.
Oh, okay, let me ask you a question. Was the light Jesus? We'll be right back after this message. The next speaker at the Prophecy Club is Bryan Melvin. He was an atheist that drank contaminated water and died. He tells what it's like to die and stand before judgment, then be sent to hell with demons tormenting him. Worse than your worst nightmare. First talk is Hell in a Box. Topics: reliving my evil past, what it was like to die, first tricked inside a cell, tour of the pit, woman arriving in a cell, sex offenders in hell, rescue by Jesus. Then he was taken to heaven. Next talk is From Hell to Heaven. Topics: life after hell, the PTSD of hell, translated to heaven, match it with the Bible, Jesus the Son of Man, land of liquid love, field of reunion and reconciliation, know everything in heaven, the grand estates, the river of life, glowing for 3 days upon his return. That's Bryan Melvin, Sunday morning, April 30th, at the Prophecy Club, 2540 K Avenue in Plano. Be seated at 8:30, speaking from 9 to noon. No charge. The DVD, Hell in a Box and Hell to Heaven, gift of $30. His book, A Land Unknown, Hell's Dominion, gift of $20. Get both of them at prophecyclub.com. for a gift of $45, or call 785-266-1112, the Bryan Melvin gift offer. DVD 30, book 20, both gift of $45, Prophecy Club, or 785-266-1112, Bryan Melvin gift offer. And now, back to the program.
As I neared the light, I saw a great rock suspended in space.
Oh, okay, let me ask you a question. Was the light Jesus?
Yes, the light was Jesus.
Okay, so at this point, it looks like everything is going wonderful. Hey, you're an atheist. You didn't live for Jesus. You die. You're heading to the light, which you believe is Jesus. You think everything is great, but something went wrong.
Yes, that's right, Stan. There sat upon that rock, this like on a judgment seat, and there was the Lord, and he wore a robe.
Okay, you're saying like your seat. In other words, you were seated on a rock before the great white throne. Am I understanding that right?
I was floating toward the rock. I could see Jesus sitting on this great seat on this rock. and he had a robe on. He had a hood covering his face, and all this beautiful light was coming from him.
Was he like a giant figure, or was he like a giant figure, or was he our size?
He was our size.
Okay, go ahead.
And so there I was floating toward him, and there I got real close to the rock, and I kept feeling the sensation of love and firmness and fairness and deep hurt. And I landed right before the Lord, and he stood up, and I fell flat. And someone picked me up who was like they had their hand with human crazy glue or something and stuck and put me up. I tell you the truth, I did not want to stand before the Lord because I didn't deserve to. That's enough.
Okay, so somehow this whole thing you didn't believe, now you are there.
There I am. That's right. I was there. And then I realized a reckoning had come, revealing who I was compared to him. I felt how great his love was, and I felt that these things were revealed to me, that in his great love and compassion, he gave me great parents, a great family. He began to show me things in my life, how I avoided serious accidents that I just passed off as a fluke. Like, for example, when I was driving down the road drunk with a whole bunch of teenagers in my car, I went over this road called Gallows Road over a hill, and I went airborne. And I was heading toward about a 300-year-old oak tree. And somehow the car literally moved, and I landed in the road and bounced on the road and made it to the bottom of the hill safely. And everybody was slapping me on the back and saying, "You're such a wonderful driver." But if they only know how scared I was. I went back and saw the skid marks, and there was absolutely no way, the way the road slightly turned, that I could have avoided missing that tree. And the Lord showed me he had the car move. He spared my life. There's a lot of times when the Lord spares our life and we don't pay attention. That's what was happening. The Lord was showing me how I never paid attention to how good he was, how much he cared, and how often he tried to save me, how many times he tried to get my attention by witnessing to me, by sending his messengers to me, for example.
I mean, like that Youth for Christ lady, right?
Yep, just like her. And I ignored his grace. I ignored every one of his overtures.
Now, he showed you many incidents, right?
All the incidents in my life were being played back to me.
Wow.
And then it was like he was showing me that he causes the rain to fall on the just and unjust. And he's always reaching out for people to try to draw them back, to be reconciled back to him. And then the reckoning hit me, because this is what I try to tell people about this judgment. This judgment was a judgment of love. The reason why I felt great love and peace was revealing my true nature, how I abused his great love shown me in this mortal life, how I abused my good parents, my nice family, how I abused and took advantage of life itself, how I abused everything for my own gain at other people's expenses. I pushed away hope. I abused every act of grace and kindness. I ended up scheming and I plotted how to get away with avoiding any consequences as an atheist. Then it was revealed to me how I treated love, how I betrayed and neglected, abandoned and slandered, and how I put people on trial in my mind, how I mocked and scoffed, and how I hurt people, how I broke hearts, how I put on people heavy burdens, too heavy for anybody to carry. And then I crucified people like the Christians in my mind. I just had to get rid of them. It'll be a great world. Get rid of the Christians. That's what I was believing. I stole from. It was revealed to me how I lied about people, how I took advantage of people. And yet I thought I was a great person and did all these great things, like try to save the whales, save the sea slugs, whatever you want to talk. I was one of those kind of people that I could just do good works, and and it didn't matter, because I could live a fulfilled life, because I viewed life as valuable since I was an atheist, because it was a cosmic accident. But in reality, all my good works were like filthy rags, so to speak, because they had no point. And here I was learning that my good works and all my things that I was doing, I really wasn't a good person, because I betrayed people. So I got to ask people, how will you stand before Christ after you die? How will you be found? Do you think you can escape the day of your own reckoning? Think about like myself, how we all abuse God's love, His mercy, His grace, how we hurt other people. What we have done with this gift of life, how we twisted it, how we mocked it, how we exploited it, how we have done to others things we should have never have done. And then we teach other people how to be a bad influence, just like I did. I taught others in my atheism how to be good atheists. And it was coming back. And here the reckoning was, if I start crying, is I can't tell you what it's like to stand before the living God and face that kind of judgment where the real you is exposed.
Amen.
There comes a reckoning. There comes a reckoning. God is not mocked. A reckoning of perfect love spurned by how I was being revealed. I realized how His love and goodness
Were you crying? Were you crying at that moment?
No, I was in a state of absolute shock. I was, in my book I write, I was flummoxed. I had no words to say. I couldn't go up to the Lord and say, Lord, the reason why I had a bad life was because I was born under a bad sign. It hit me on my head. And that's why I act so
there
crazy.
Was no talking your way out of this.
Yeah, there's no way of talking myself out of this. There's no excuses. It was totally being uncovered. Love was totally uncovering me, showing me how I would take advantage of God's own goodness and His own loving character continually if I was allowed into what was behind Him, heaven. I was not permitted to enter into heaven. And I found out right quick that I was sealed. When you die, you are sealed in your state that you die in. And there I was standing before the Lord, and it was made clear to me that God repays people for what they have done, bringing upon them what their conduct deserves.
So the whole time, God was trying to get your attention, trying to show you He loved you, trying to get you to receive Jesus.
That's correct. It was being revealed to me standing before the Lord that He was showing me how I denied Him all the time. All is reaching out to me, trying to save my life, just trying to get my attention. And what I did with life was terrible. All His gifts that He gave me, His gift of life, how I hurt my girlfriends, robbed their hearts and stomped on them and used them, how I stole money out of my parents' wallet, for example. I just kept seeing that I was not a very, very good person. I kept seeing that I was this big bad atheist standing before the Lord who I denied, seeing how I kept pushing people around, how I lived with bikers and I did drugs and alcohol, how I just mocked life, how I destroyed my own life. It was like I was in this mode of self-destruction, like many folks find themselves and don't even understand why. There I was, just standing before the Lord, having this revealed to me. All of a sudden, the Lord began to show me other things, how people were praying for me all throughout my life, how my parents prayed for me, how my aunts were praying for me, how that Christian girl prayed for me, how that pastor I blew smoke in his face prayed for me, and they didn't hold anything against me. Was all revealed, and it cut my heart to see how I poked my finger in God's eye by how I treated other people. I had no excuse, and nobody has an idea what it's like to stand before the living God and be judged, having the real you exposed, and you have no excuse. And while I was standing there, the Lord spoke to me, and He was saying, returning is an option yet to be decided, but I'm going to grant you to see a land unknown that's best forgotten, but not to remain unseen. And when you arrive in this place, say my name and my title. This is not for your glory, Bryan, but mine. I gotta collect myself for a second. The Bible's right when it says it's a terrible thing to stand before the Lord and have the real you exposed, then have Him say something like that, and you don't quite comprehend what He was saying, and He wants you to come back and tell about this place. There I was lifted up, some force lifted me up, and I noticed that I was wearing this filthy, like a judo suit. I was being floated in air toward this door that opened like a scroll, and I had no comprehension exactly what was going on, except that I was heading to a very bad place where I would arrive and say his name and his title, Jesus Christ. And soon I entered into a tunnel vortex, and I was heading toward this land unknown, and going through this tornado-like vortex. It was like a tornado. It was sights and sound. It was green. It was ugly. I could smell. It smelled horrible. The sounds were horrible. The smells were so incredible. You could taste how bad it was. If you ever been around anything about death or anything where you've hunted and you come across a dead animal, that doesn't even compare to the smell that I smelled. And the sulfur smell, and the heat was so hot, just like a blast furnace coming through and spinning through this tunnel. And I was heading toward another light. It was a yellow light. And soon, all of a sudden, I fell through the sky, landed with a thud on the ground. And I looked up and I said, "Where am I?" I looked up and I saw a house on a hill with this ugly looking tree out there, and all of a sudden all these people come running out of there and down the hill and up and greeting me and welcoming me and saying, "Hey, I'm glad you made it to paradise," slapping me on the back. And I was kind of taken aback because I knew I was heading toward a bad place, and I didn't know where I was. All these people were convincing me that I was in paradise.
Well, unfortunately, time is gone. We're going to continue this story tomorrow, but understand that Bryan is going to be speaking at the Spirit of Prophecy Church April the 30th, Sunday morning. He asked you to be seated at 8:30. He's going to be speaking from 9 to noon on the corner of Park and K in Plano. The address is 2540 K Avenue. No charge. Topic is Hell in a Box and From Hell to Heaven. And if you'd like to have the DVD, it's a gift of $30. His book, A Land Unknown, Hell's Dominion, available for a gift of $20. Both of them for a gift of $45. Available at prophecyclub.com, prophecyclub.com, or 785-266-1112. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers. And thank you for your gifts of support. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. Okay, I have some good news. We're going to extend the archaeology gift offer for one more week. Here's what you get. It's actually 4 discs. You're going to get the 1991 video that I shot when Leslie and I visited Noah's Ark, the crossing side of the Red Sea, all kinds of amazing things on that 2-week tour with Ron Wyatt. That's called Archaeology Confirms the Bible. Then I made one back in 2012 called Noah's Ark Confirms the Bible, and this is explaining a lot of the things that was actually on the first DVD. Then we had Michael Root in to make 2 amazing DVDs. First one called End Times Archaeology, second one called Dead Sea Scrolls. 4 discs, 4 titles, and is normally valued at $80, but we're making it available right now for a gift of just $40. We're going to extend it one more week. It's called the Archaeology Gift Offer at prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. Archaeology Gift Offer, prophecyclub.com, 785-266-1112. Last week, get it now. We have put the collection of the best of the 2016 DVDs together in an awesome gift offer. First, Miracles in Pakistan. Pastor Masih tells the story of 23,000 Muslims that he led to Jesus in Pakistan. Then in his DVD, Visits to Heaven and Hell, tells about going to heaven once and twice to hell, and it will scare. And then the third one is The Babylonians Are Coming, his 9 dreams that God gave him about judgment on America. Then Bree Keaton talks about explosive prayer strategies, emergency prayers that work. Finally, includes Lindsey Williams' new DVD, Trump Speaks to the Elite, and how Trump changed things and the new plans of the elite. 5 DVDs, valued at $168, all available now for a gift of just $75. Helps us stay on radio, okay? That's valued at $168, all for a gift of just $75. Prophecyclub.com, 785-266-1112. Prophecyclub.com or 785-266-1112. The best of 2016. Order now.